Okay, in this video I want to show and talk a little bit about cam and crank relationship. So here we have our crankshaft gear and here we have our camshaft gear. And you can see that the camshaft gear is bigger than the crankshaft gear and it's actually twice the size. Okay, now the reason for that is if you think about the 4 strokes of a 4-stroke cycle engine, we have intake, compression, power, and exhaust. And so on the intake stroke, that piston comes down, right? And this crankshaft will do a half of a turn. And then we get compression. That piston comes back up and we get another half of a turn. That's 1 turn of the crankshaft. Then we get compression. Compression comes down. We get another half a turn of the crankshaft. Combustion. We get another half a turn of the crankshaft. And then we get exhaust, another half a turn. So 2 full turns of the crankshaft to get intake, compression, power, and exhaust. Now, in that intake, compression, power, and exhaust cycle, we only want the intake valve to open once. We only want the exhaust valve to open once. So this camshaft cannot turn twice, right? If it was the same size gear, it would turn twice. So it has to be exactly twice as big, so it makes 1 turn while this one makes 2 turns, okay? So let's just see that. So we go here, so we've got a half of a turn, right? We've done about a 1/4 turn on the crank gear, and we're coming up here, so that we've got, there's 1 full turn of the crank gear, and so I'm looking at these dots. You can see that dot's there, and this dot's up here. So this is done 1/2 of a turn, this is done 1 turn. We go around again, so there's about another half turn on the crank gear and about a 1/4 turn on the cam, and now we finish the cycle. So we've done 2 full turns of the crank and 1 full turn of that cam. So that cam has opened the intake valve once and the crank has turned 2 full turns, allowing that piston to come up and down for the 4 full strokes. Now, what are these dots? Well, these are our timing marks, okay? So aside from doing it once, it has to do it at exactly the right time. When number 1 piston is starting to come down, so number 1 piston's in here, when it's starting to come down on intake, we need to open that intake valve up here on the head at exactly the right time. Okay, so that's what this does. This keeps it in time. If I put that gear on and have this pointing over here, I'm going to be opening up number 1 intake when it's on number 3 or something, right? And the engine just won't even run, okay? And then, you'll get fuel kind of going through everywhere, intake valves open at the wrong spots, spark happening, and then lighting it up at the wrong time, and, you get backfiring and all sorts of things, okay? So very, very, very important to time that crankshaft and camshaft together, okay? Now, let's just have a look at sort of what's happening inside. So, I'm just going to see if I can see this here. All right, you can kind of see that cam lobe. I'm looking right in here. Okay, so if you can see that cam lobe turning inside there. It's hard to see the lobe coming up. Okay, but okay, so what we're actually doing is we're turning the lobe of the cam to push up the lifter at the right time, and I'll show that in a different video.